ever been sued by somebody who felt that they were terminated based on case assignments?
In the entire history of the FBI, I'm sure they have.
No, since your tenure.
I'm sure there's ongoing litigation.
Yes. In fact, there is ongoing litigation. And in fact, people have been asked who they voted for. And in fact, you are running an FBI for the President of the United States rather than the people of the United States, because my questions were not hypotheticals. They are the things you have done during your tenure. And according to a lawsuit filed last week by long-term FBI agents, you fired former acting director Brian Driscoll. He had served with the Bureau for nearly 20 years, earned a Medal of Honor, Medal of Valor for bravery during the dangerous ISIS raid, and had a wealth of crisis response experience and led the FBI's critical incident response group. When the Trump administrations interviewed Mr. Driscoll for that role, they interrogated him about his political leanings and who he voted for in the last 5 elections. Questions Mr. Driscoll refused to answer because those types of questions impermissibly politicized the FBI. You also fired Steve Jensen, who served the FBI for nearly 2 decades and ran critical terrorism, counterintelligence, and organized crime operations, whom you once described as embodying what the American public demands of the FBI. But he was fired because he took part in investigating crimes committed on January 6th. And Trump's MAGA base lambasted you online for keeping him at the FBI. So he's no longer at the FBI. You also fired a decorated combat veteran with decades of experience in the Bureau, Special Agent Walter Jardia, because he worked on the investigation into the Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election and helped investigate Trump's ally, Peter Navarro. Director Patel, it is very clear that you have flunked your own test. You've put saving your job, which I actually believe you were being honest about during your confirmation hearings, over doing what's right for the FBI and the American people. That is not adherence to the law. Thank you, and I yield back.
Time of the gentlelady is expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, it's great to have this opportunity. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your service. And I've got to say, one of the most disheartening components of the previous administration, when I was working with local law enforcement all over the state of North Carolina, all over the country, people rightfully did not really care about the inner work.
It's important for this FBI to be transparent without jeopardizing our investigations. So a little bit of the timeline is important. Charlie Kirk was unfortunately assassinated on September 10th. We immediately, the next day, released images early in the day in local time in Utah to start the public partnership in our manhunt for the assassin and culprits. At approximately 5 p.m. local time, I arrived on the ground and walked the crime scene myself. And we flew multiple FBI assets in and out to process DNA simultaneously while bringing in evidence response technicians, hostage rescue teams, and other experts to assist state and local law enforcement with their investigation. At 8 p.m. local on September 11th, the FBI collected and populated and promulgated at a press conference a video of the suspect on the grounds. We also released enhanced images. Due to that release that I directed and ordered, the suspect involved was apprehended and in custody at 10 p.m. local time. That's less than 2 hours after we did the video release and the photo release. So within 33 hours, that individual suspect was in custody. And his family, who has since been interrogated, specifically stated to FBI interrogators that because of the video that the FBI released at my direction and because of the photographs that they released, they identified their son, they confronted their son when he swung by their home, and that's what led to his apprehension. We are still, the FBI has that investigation ongoing, and it continues to be ongoing, and I want to thank the state of Utah and the state and local authorities there. And I also want to thank the Attorney General and President Trump for directing resources to allow us to conduct that investigation as we have. Under this administration, the FBI has arrested more than 23,000 violent criminals, 23,000 in 7 months. That's twice as many year to date last year. We've taken over 6,000 firearms off the streets. 6,000 guns are no longer in the hands of criminals in 7 months. We've identified and found and located 4,700 child victims. That is a 35% increase year-to-date last year. We have arrested 1,500 child predators. That is a 10% increase year-to-date last year in just 7 months. We've assisted our partners with countless counterterrorism operations around the world. We've captured, at the FBI, 4 of the most top 10 wanted fugitives in the world in 7 months. To put that in perspective, that's as many as my predecessor nabbed in the entirety of the Biden administration. We got 4, we got more coming. On top of that, in 2 weeks, thanks to the help of the CIA, we collected and captured one of the individuals responsible for the horrific Abbey Gate bombing that led to the murder of 13 service members. We did that in 2 weeks. They didn't do it in the 4 years of the entire prior administration. Nationwide, we've been executing our Operation Summer Heat, the FBI's national focus on targeting violent crime based on intelligence-driven operations. Ask the citizens of Seattle, Miami, Memphis, Charlotte, Chicago, New Orleans, to specifically highlight New Orleans and Nashville. There has been a 250% increase in violent crime arrests in those cities alone and other mid-major cities that I've just listed. In just a few short months, we have already unleashed 1,000 FBI personnel across this country. Every single state across this country is getting a plus up. This is a fiction that the FBI is short or that we are compromising the men and women in the field. They do not need to be in Washington, D.C., so we're sending them into the field to each and every one of your states. Because of that, crime is at an all-time low. We had to do it because of the explosion of crime. And maybe the most important stat for Americans to realize, in just 7 months, we are on track to produce the lowest murder rate in modern U.S. history by double digits. Those are results not of mine. Those are results of the men and women of the FBI. If you want to criticize me, bring it on, but do not attack the brave leaders in the field. We are also working 24/7, 365 on the opioid epidemic that is killing more than hundreds of thousands of people a year. We have seized 1,600 kilograms of fentanyl off the streets so far in 7 months. Year-to-date, 25% increase. To put that in perspective, that's enough to kill a third of the American population, 120 million Americans. 100,000 kilograms of cocaine and meth gone off the streets. Earlier this year, I highlighted in Cincinnati, Ohio, how we're getting creative to chase down those that were willing to do harm to our citizens, not just by striking at the heart of the fentanyl producers, but the fentanyl precursor companies in China. And we indicted for the first time multiple companies and individuals, not just in America, but in mainland China, that are producing the ingredients that produce and make fentanyl that kill our children. And we're going to keep going. Counterterrorism work, cyber attacks, and foreign adversaries are something the FBI must never sleep on, and we are not sleeping. In the counterintelligence space alone, this year, year-to-date, 30% increase in counterintelligence arrests from the DPRK, Russia, Iran, and China. And I want the American people to know, in this setting, there's a lot of work that the brave men and women in the FBI are doing we just can't get into, but they don't stop. Our cyber threats, ransomware attacks, those harming our children online. We have nearly a 20% increase in indictments and arrests in 7 months alone this year. We're going after those that harm our malware, infrastructure systems, telecom systems, and energy structure. Combating SALT and Vault typhoons are just a little bit of the examples we're doing. Maybe most importantly, under the counterterrorism and domestic terrorism umbrella, are nihilist, violent extremists, and those that label themselves 764, who wish to go online and convince children to maim and mutilate themselves and commit suicide. And we are producing record numbers of arrests under that umbrella organization. We even stopped an individual in the 764 network who wanted to conspire to kill an adolescent girl. He is now in custody. Transparency remains one of my main priorities at the FBI. And this is what I've done in my 7 months at the helm. We've produced more than 33,000 pages of documents to Congress to a variety of committees, including, I believe, 7,500 to this committee alone, if memory serves me correct. To put the 33,000 in perspective, my predecessor in 7 years produced 13,000 pages in total to the United States Congress. His predecessor in 4 years produced 3,000 pages in total. I repeat, I have produced 33,000 pages in 7 years to this Congress and will continue to do so. I'm dedicated to restoring the trust in the mission and the integrity of the FBI, and we cannot do so without congressional oversight, and I promise you I will continue to do so. On the Epstein case, the original sin on the Epstein case was how it was handled by Mr. Acosta when he first brought the case in 2006, 7, and 8. The original case had a very limited search warrant, had a very limited search window, had a very limited investigative window. I was not there when those search warrants and that investigation was launched. I would not have done it that way. They were limited to only 3 to 4 years of investigations from 97 to approximately 2001 and 2002 to 2005. Mr. Acosta allowed Mr. Epstein to enter into a plea agreement where he served weekend jails for trafficking minor women. He also was allowed to leave jail to go home on the weekends. Plus, he allowed a non-prosecution agreement to be signed as part of that plea deal, prohibiting future investigations from that prosecution and from that evidence, and prohibiting the collection of further material. That is the original sin. We are working with Congress to produce more than any administration ever has material on Epstein. And I welcome the challenge to tell us that we are not being as transparent as the law allows. We even went to court and asked the judges to lift those prosecutorial agreements and to lift those court order seals, and they denied us 3 times. Congress is welcome to do the same and join the fight. And I'd lastly like to focus on operation that the president led in D.C. Because of this, we are taking this fight in D.C. to every single city across the country. 2,100 arrests in the last month alone. D.C. has seen a 60% decrease in gun crimes, 75% decrease in carjackings, and 53% decrease in homicides in our nation's capital. And rightly so. We're bringing that fight to the streets of America. I want to thank you for your support, and I'm proud to be the director that leads this FBI into a new headquarters building that they've needed for decades, saving the taxpayer $3.5 billion, and also providing our workforce a safe environment. If you don't know the calamity that is the Hoover Building, I invite each and every one of you to walk around. I'll give you a tour myself, and you can see where the cement falls on the heads of our employees that is only to be saved by netting. Just to give you an example. Thank you for support to our mission. And I do want to highlight one thing about D.C. It's because the FBI gathered sources and evidence that we were able to, through our source network, identify the horrific murder of the D.C. intern, Eric Tarpinian. And I've spoken to his family, and we are working to bring them justice. And Mr. Chairman, in my 16 years, now my 17 years of government service, if anyone has any questions about my service, bring it on.
Yeah. Thank you, Director. We will now proceed under the 5-minute rule. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Ison.
Director, delighted to have you here. You are a breath of fresh air. As you outlined, and I won't repeat it, the accomplishments, you did so with the same resources as your predecessor, roughly. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
And so how much of that has to do with taking people out of the backside of the FBI and moving them into the field, into doing the job for which we primarily pay the FBI?
It's exactly what we needed done. 1/3 of the FBI's workforce resided in the National Capital Region before I got there. 1/3 of the crimes do not happen in Washington, D.C.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. So 1,000 personnel of the FBI were deployed across this country on a permanent basis, and every single state in this union is getting a plus up, not a reduction, a plus up of 1811s of intel analysts and support staff. And that is why the crime rates are going down in record numbers.
Well, thank you for doing that. And it's perhaps the hardest thing for a bureaucrat to do is to lower the head count around them that support them. And I appreciate your willingness to do it different than your predecessor. A lot of what you covered earlier was the find, the discovery, and then the prosecution that is done by the DOJ. But I want to talk a little bit about the prevent side.
On the Charlie assassination, sir?
No, on all of these.
Okay.
Okay, for example, and I'll bring it up before the Democrats bring it up, January 6th. January 6th, we now know, because of your find, that in fact there were people involved who were not just observers but participants who in fact, it's been alleged, and I personally believe, in fact, were part of promoting, perhaps even the one woman who died, encouraging her to walk through a door that led to her death. When you see that kind of activity, and you know it was done under predecessors with full knowledge, whether it's January 6th, where embedded people crossed the line, or any other activity, including obviously the Russian hoax that we're now dealing with up in, front and center. My question to you is, what can you or others do to prevent it from occurring again? Not on your watch, but on future watches. How can we know that this won't happen again the moment you leave the FBI?
It's simple. What I'm doing through our leadership cadre is having FBI agents do what they were trained to do, not what they were not trained to do, not put them in situations that both harm them and the public. We're also utilizing our SWAT networks and prioritizing the threat structure to go after the narco traffickers, the counterterrorism people, the counterintelligence threats, and the cyber threats. That's what they were trained to do, and that's what we're letting them do.
One major question I have, after decades of doing this, on our side of it, both the chairman, myself, and others, both at oversight and here, have seen that the FBI and the Department of Justice hide behind non-statutory practices. Now, you've changed the interpretation of many of those practices. That's why we're getting the discovery that was previously withheld. How do we work together to make sure that we never again have false walls, non-statutory walls that say the Department of Justice has a prohibition about giving, quote, you fill in the blank, that has led to the chairman not seeing anything until you took over?
I'm wedded to aggressive constitutional oversight. Having been a House congressional staffer, I know that is an important part of securing our democracy. And the way we make it an everlasting, enduring process is by showing the American people the results of what we are doing and the important work of this committee and putting it out to them so they can see government waste, fraud, and abuse. And then they can demand from our constituents and our electors that they want this process to continue.
Last major question here. Some things are so sensitive that we both would agree they cannot be made public. Will you commit to this committee, when it is too sensitive to disclose, that you would at least make it available for in-camera review by the chairman and ranking members or others designated?
I have done that, and I will continue to do that.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a breath of fresh air. This is the beginning of what we need. But my questions today for the director are ones in which I believe that we do need to codify by agreement or by statute, if necessary, the kind of openness and transparency that we're seeing from this administration, the kind of discovery that's allowing us to do our oversight properly. And I would hope that that be the follow-up to this, obviously along with the Attorney General. And I yield back my 4 seconds.
Thank you. The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Director Patel. In the wake of the tragic murder of Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump said, quote, "Violence and murder are the tragic consequences of demonizing those with whom you disagree, day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible," close quote. I would note for the record that Donald Trump has famously demonized practically every person he has ever disagreed with, and therefore, using his own logic, he has put their lives at risk. I should know, about 2 weeks ago, when I announced my decision not to my decision not to seek re-election, many people on both sides of the aisle, including the chairman, offered me well wishes and thanked me for my service. Donald Trump, on the other hand, took to Truth Social to call me a, quote, psychopathic nut job, among other things. Yesterday, I received a threatening note filled with anti-Semitic comments and hateful attacks that mimicked some of the same language used by the president. I am sure many of us on this committee face similar threats every day. We have seen political assaults on both the left and the right. The attack on Charlie Kirk, the attempted assassination of the president, the murder of the Democratic Speaker of the Minnesota House, the assault on Paul Pelosi, and the attack on the Capitol on January 6th, for example. Director Patel, do you agree that there is political violence from both the left and the right?
There's too much political violence.
Do you agree, yes or no, that there's violence?
There is too much political violence based on ideologies from either side.
From either side, okay. Are you aware of the study by the Cato Institute, a well-known conservative group, that found that 69% of the violence is from the right?
I'm not familiar with that study.
You're not familiar, okay. I would commend it to you. Are you aware the administration has threatened to use violence as an excuse to crack down on liberty and freedom of speech?
Say that again, I'm sorry?
Are you aware the administration has threatened to use violence as an excuse to crack down on liberty and freedom of speech?
Nobody at the FBI is doing that.
I didn't ask you about the FBI. I said the administration.
I speak for the FBI.
I would like to enter the record an article from today's New York Times titled, "Trump Invokes Kirk's Killing and Justifying Measures to Silence Opponents." In the wake of Charlie Kirk's killing, President Trump and his allies have laid out a broad plan to target liberal groups, monitor speech, revoke visas, and designate certain groups as domestic terrorists. I ask unanimous consent to insert this into the record. Thank you. Politicizing the murder of Charlie King to go after free speech is not a legacy I believe Charlie King would have wanted. Moving on, I want to address another topic. The FBI has traditionally played a key role in prosecuting public officials for corruption. But I fear that at a time when the president is accepting planes from Qatar for his post-presidential personal use, issuing pardons to major donors, and personally profiting from the office of the presidency, the FBI may be abandoning its commitment to investigating public corruption. Since its creation in the wake of the Watergate scandal, the Public Integrity Section has been one of the crown jewels of the Department of Justice, investigating and prosecuting corruption among the nation's public officials and acting as a key safeguard against politicized prosecutions. This section's work has been supported by an elite squad in the FBI devoted specifically to rooting out corruption. But according to reports, the Public Integrity Section has now been decimated, and the FBI's Public Corruption Squad has been disbanded. I would like to submit for the record a New York Times article entitled, "FBI Dismantles Elite Public Corruption Squad." I ask unanimous consent. Thank you. These actions are an invitation to corrupt politicians to break the law, since they know that the government is asleep at the switch. Last month, Senator Warren and I, along with dozens of other members of Congress, wrote to you and Attorney General Bondi expressing grave concern over your decision to effectively legalize corruption and to politicize prosecutorial decisions. And he asks unanimous consent to enter this letter into the record. Thank you. I don't have time today to walk through all your questions, all of our questions and concerns, but will you commit to answering this letter in short order so that we can understand what factors led to this decision and how it has impacted the ability to hold corrupt officials accountable?
I will review your letter with my team and respond as soon as I can.
You will respond. Thank you. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director, for being here. I appreciate the change in the FBI and the tone since you've been there. We heard the ranking member, however, describe the FBI under your leadership as being resorting to political enforcement and you personally as being paranoid. I would just suggest that perhaps that is the projections of the ranking member himself and not you, sir. I want to refer to something that was said yesterday in yesterday's hearing by Senator Grassley. He said, "It's well understood that your predecessor left you an FBI infected with politics." At your nomination hearing, he gave you records, made public records about whistleblowers regarding something called Arctic Frost. Arctic Frost was the FBI case opened and approved by anti-Trump FBI agent Thibault, and Arctic Frost became Jack Smith's elector case. The new records show that Arctic Frost was much broader than just an electoral matter. In fact, it was expanded to Republican organizations. Some examples of the groups that the Ray FBI sought to place under political investigation included the Republican National Committee, Republican Attorneys General Association, and Trump political groups. In total, 92 Republican targets, including Republican groups, Republican-linked individuals, were placed under the investigative scope of Arctic Frost. On that political list for investigation was one of Charlie Kirk's groups, Turning Point USA. In other words, Arctic Frost wasn't just a case to politically investigate Trump. It was the vehicle by which partisan FBI agents and DOJ prosecutors could achieve their partisan ends and improperly investigate the entire Republican political apparatus. I'd ask that, Mr. Chairman, that document be administered.
Without objection.
So, I know that this may be under current investigation, but I wish to ask specific questions about this for just a moment. What search tools were used in Arctic Frost to view private communications of targets?
I believe the traditional search tools, search warrants, lawful service of process, and the tools that the FBI has in our infrastructure systems, cybersecurity systems, and counterintelligence systems. But generally speaking, if I may, I want to use this to highlight the fact that I'm continuing my promise to work with Congress to produce documents simultaneously and also conduct ongoing investigations. I'm giving you as much as I can, and I'll give you more when I can.
Thank you. Another question regarding that is, were there any directives from the Biden White House concerning the Arctic frost investigation?
Were there any
directives or communications from the Biden White House itself concerning the Arctic frost investigation?
I'll just rely on what was turned over to date, sir.
Okay. So I want to add here, the search warrants that were used included the seizing of a U.S. member of Congress, his phone. I think we all know who that was and how that was taken away and used for political purposes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Director. So we'll leave that for a second, and let's go over to the Charlie Kirk case for just a second. Let's emphasize this. How many hours did it take from the assassination to the arrest of the assassin, Mr. Director?
33.
That seems pretty swift, and it was because of the actual release of videos and photographs that you directed to be released, sir.
That's correct, and to put it in perspective, the Boston bomber took 5 days and Luigi Mangione took 5 days.
Was the platform Discord forthright from the start with law enforcement about the shooter's communications on its platform?
Discord, the platform ownership, has been working with our lawful process, and we are obtaining materials from them on a rolling basis.
Thank you. And I want to get back here to Arctic frost for just a second, Mr. Chairman. I'd like the unclassified document from the FBI released to be admitted to the record.
Without objection.
And a document from the Economic Times also to be admitted to the record.
Without objection.
So I'm going to give you the last 30 seconds. We could go on about the Epstein case. I've got a bunch about that, but I'm just going to let you, if you wish to respond to either of the two vitriolic questioning or statement from the Democrats.
The work of the FBI speaks for itself. It's on showcase here today. Anyone that wants to attack the FBI can attack me, but leave our leadership structure alone. When you have 23,000 violent felons arrested, twice as many as this time last year, the work speaks for itself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. Appreciate your good work, Director Patel. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, before you joined the FBI, you railed against it for covering up Jeffrey Epstein's human trafficking ring. Let me refresh your memory with this clip.
It has Epstein's list. They're sitting on it. That doesn't seem like something you should do. You're protecting the world's foremost predator. That seems like an evil thing to do, regardless of who may be embarrassed in the release of that list. Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list.
So you finished that December 2023 interview with a challenge to the FBI and harsh words for Republicans in Congress for not getting the Epstein files out to the public. You can see this clip.
Boy pants, and let us know who the pedophiles are.
Put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are, you said. You emphasized that the president and FBI director each had complete authority to release Epstein's client list. You said Epstein's black book is under the, quote, direct control of the director of the FBI. Look at this clip.
This is way off the topic, but who has Jeffrey Epstein's
Black book?
black book?
FBI.
But who? That is, I mean, there's...
that's under direct control of the director of the FBI.
All right, so you were sworn in as director more than 200 days ago. Now the black book is under your direct control. So why haven't you released the names of Epstein's co-conspirators in the rape and sex trafficking of young women and girls?
The Rolodex, which is what everybody colloquially refers to as the black book, has been released.
Oh, no, you're talking about what the journalist got 5 years ago? No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what you were talking about there,
That's
the black
exactly
book
what I
under
was
the
talking.
direct control of the FBI director.
We have released more material than anyone else before. The Biden administration, Obama administration had the exact opportunities to release this material, and they never did. And if you are selling the men and women of the FBI,
Why
we're not
do you
going after
change your
child
position?
predators. Hang on, you said we're not going after child predators. 1,500 child predators arrested this year, 35% increase.
I'll reclaim my time.
4,700 child victims
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to
found.
reclaim my time if you could instruct the witness. Why have you changed your position? There you were saying it's under the direct control of the FBI director and all of it should be released. Why have you changed your position?
Everything that has been lawfully permitted to be released has been released. And as I told you, the investigation was limited. And let me make something crystal clear. I never said Jeffrey Epstein didn't traffic other people, other women, and they're not other victims. This is the investigation we were given from 2006, 7, and 8, and the search warrants from 2006, 7, and 8. That's what we're working with.
Well, wait, have you released all of the stuff that the FBI has seized from Epstein's house? The computers, the emails, the file cabinets, the documents? What about the financial records? Have you released all of that?
Everything the court has allowed us to release.
Which court are you talking about?
3 separate federal courts have come in and said.
We're talking about the evidence you've got. It's got nothing to do with what those courts have.
Do you have any idea how the law works? Do you want me to break the law in a federal judge's order?
No, I want you to
satisfy
follow your own
curiosity?
word, Director Patel. You said up there it was under the direct control of the FBI director. He had the black book.
Everything I have direct control over, we have gone to court. You haven't.
Complete your sentence. Everything you have direct control over, you said.
Have gone to court, and everything we have direct control over.
Complete your sentence. You said everything.
Release. We're releasing.
He'd like to complete his answer.
You began the sentence, everything you have direct control over, and then you stopped that sentence. You've released everything that you have direct control over?
And I have direct control over and can lawfully release. If you're not familiar with the court orders, that's not my fault.
Oh, I'm
perfectly, look at them.
I'm perfectly familiar with them. But how did we prosecute Ghislaine Maxwell?
She was prosecuted with the investigatory material that was collected from 2001 and 2005 because of the non-prosecution agreements and the court orders on the investigations and search warrants. We were not able to develop new information. And oh, by the way, Jeffrey Epstein was out for 12 years, and the Obama and Biden administration did nothing to look at his work, his pedophile network. If you want to blame me, that's fine. But now you're blaming the men and women who conducted this great search.
I'm not blaming anybody other than you. You're not keeping your word. You said that you would release all of the materials under your direct control.
Has anyone released more information on Epstein than I have? Has anyone?
Much more.
Did Comey? Did Ray?
Much more.
Did they?
Excuse me. Much more has come out in the days since the American people in Congress have been demanding it, but it's coming out in dribs and drabs. Why don't you just release the entire file as you promised to do?
I literally just told you, there are multiple federal court orders. I'm not going to break the law to satisfy your curiosity. You didn't join us when we filed court to release the court orders. You could have. You have lawyers. You could have shown up. You didn't do that.
That's a tiny fraction of the material we're talking about.
That is not.
It is a tiny fraction.
How do you know that? Have you seen everything?
It's all misdirection.
How do you know
The time
that?
of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. Director. Just to be clear, how many of the Epstein files were released in the 4 years of the Biden administration?
0.
And how many have you released?
I don't have the number, but it's got to be thousands of pages of stuff.
I was going to ask you to begin whether Americans are safer today than they were 9 months ago, but you cited dramatic increases in criminal arrests since you've taken office, a dramatic decrease in crime that's resulted. Who would have thought that taking criminals off the streets would reduce the crime rate? But somehow we have stumbled upon that new truth. But it begs the question, what was the FBI doing during the 4 years of the Biden administration to see that dramatic an increase in work under your tenure?
The simple answer is I'm letting good cops be cops. We're working with our state and local law enforcement. We're energizing our partnerships. We're bringing on more task force officers. When you have more cops in the streets, when you're using ground-based intelligence, when you're not weaponizing law enforcement and focusing on D.C. and focusing on the rest of America, this is what happens. It is not a significant mind shift in terms of how we maneuver the FBI. They've wanted to do this work since they signed up. We're just letting them.
And we've seen many prominent Democrats oppose your efforts to restore law and order to the streets of our nation's capital. I mean, all of us here have seen a dramatic change for the better here in Washington, D.C. Why are so many Democrats attacking you for that?
Sir, Democrats have been attacking me for a decade, as is the fake news media. They didn't like the fact that I exposed the Russiagate host and the largest weaponization of the FBI and DOJ in U.S. history. We proved it to be true with congressional oversight. I'm wed to that congressional oversight and will continue to do that work.
Christopher Wray repeatedly warned this committee that the Biden open borders policy had produced a significant increase in terrorist threats that he said kept him up at night. A particular concern, he said, was the 2 million gotaways that entered the country during the Biden administration. That's an average of 41,000 every month. What are the monthly gotaway numbers today?
Sir, I'll have to get back to you on the exact gotaway numbers, but identifying that there are gotaways is step one. Going and manhunting them is step two, and that's what we're committing our resources to do.
Well, that's my next question, is what progress has the administration made in apprehending and removing terrorist threats that came in during the Biden years?
I think you're talking about, if you're not, let me know, known or suspected terrorists, and we've encountered almost zero at the southern border since the southern border has been sealed. But the problem that we are running into is our northern border. It's largely expansive. The enemy has adapted, and we need more focus on the northern border to stop known or suspected terrorists from coming in from places like China, Russia, the Middle East, Africa, Afghanistan.
And what can you tell us about the remaining threat posed by potential terrorist cells here in the United States?
The terrorist threat that continues to be posed by international terrorists here in the United States is one of my highest priorities. We are working through our intelligence community partners to identify those individuals, and we've taken down numerous individuals in numerous rings across this country to neutralize that terrorist threat, including places like New York City, Los Angeles, and I believe Dallas, Texas most recently.
How extensively did criminal cartels like Sinaloa, Jalisco, New Generation, MS-13, Tren de Aragua, and others infiltrate our country during the Biden administration?
By the tens of thousands.
Well, and what progress have you been making in combating their presence?
I think the DHS is best to speak to that, but I think I can't remember the numbers of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of individuals they found that came in illegally, and the tens of thousands that associations to criminal networks have all been deported.
And that effort is being opposed every step of the way by Democratic leaders in our cities, some of our states, and right here in the Congress. Isn't that true?
Well, we're just working where we can in every single city we can, and I welcome the opportunity to partner with Republicans or Democrats on fighting violent crime like we're doing.
Mr. Biggs asked about Arctic frost. What else can you tell us about that and what we need to do to assure that it never happens again?
Continue the congressional oversight work that you're doing on Arctic frost. Let me provide you with more documentation on Arctic frost, and also call in witnesses from the paperwork that we have given you. You have that right, and the American public deserves to hear what those people have to say. As for my ongoing investigation, there's not much I can say.
What role did the FBI play in suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story during the 2024 election?
Off the top of my memory, sir, I believe the FBI was in possession of verified information from that laptop, and it was improperly publicized that they did not have information and masked it as Russian disinformation. We now know that was categorically false. I don't know why the FBI did that, when they did that, but we've released all the materials related to that.
Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from New York is recognized. Mr. Golden.
Mr. Patel, does Donald Trump appear anywhere in the Epstein files?
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
It's not a complicated question. Does Donald Trump appear anywhere in the Epstein files?
I didn't say it was a complicated question. I just didn't hear you, so my apologies. We have released where President Trump's name's in the Epstein files, and everybody else, and all credible information that we are legally allowed to release has been released.
All right, so let's go through that. You're referring to court orders that prohibit you from releasing grand jury testimony under Rule 6E. Is that what you're referring to when you say as the law allows?
That's a piece of it.
Really? What other evidence do those three court orders you cited prohibit from being released?
Information that was collected pursuant to those search warrants that were limited in fashion.
Wrong. That's not what the court order says, and that's not under 6E.
And you're talking, and I said that's 6E, and I said there was others, and I'm answering that. There are sealed court order documents. There are protective orders.
They are unsealed as part of discovery given to Ghislaine Maxwell. They are no longer sealed.
That's just not true. We can argue about it all you want.
Okay, well, you agree that there are, so your testimony here is that the reason why you are not releasing all of the videos that you have acknowledged, there are so many, and that the FBI spent thousands of hours of reviewing, the photographs, the photographs that you have. You're saying that you're not releasing those because there's a court order requiring them to be sealed? Is that your testimony?
Never said that about the videos. On the totality of the videos, of the thousands of images that were seized pursuant to the search warrants executed at the time, the overwhelming majority of that video is pornographic material that was downloaded from the internet and child sexual abuse material. We will never release that.
Well, as you should not release the victims. But if there are videos that relate to others who Epstein trafficked to, such as maybe Prince Andrew, or photographs, that you have total control to release.
Yes, and if it exists...
And so why haven't you released it?
Why are you supposing that that is a fact when in fact it is false? Are you saying that...
You're saying that none of the videos relate to anything relevant to the Jeffrey Epstein trafficking ring?
Every single video that we have collected pursuant to the prior search warrants has been examined for the last 10 years. And every single video has been utilized for whatever prosecutions were able to be legally brought.
I'm not asking about prosecutions. I'm asking about why you aren't releasing the full Epstein files, including the names of people who were involved in the sex ring that you promised to do before you became FBI director.
I just told you, I'm not going to release downloaded porn of
I'm not
children
asking
on the
about
internet.
that. Fine. I'm asking about all the other files.
What other videos? Tell me. Tell me.
That's what I'm asking.
Tell me.
You're saying there are no videos that would be relevant to anyone else involved in the Jeffrey Epstein sex ring.
Pursuant to Mr. Acosta's collection of information based on the search warrants. That's all we have in our possession.
And I'm asking you, that stuff.
That's all we got.
I'm not asking all you got. I'm asking you, in that stuff, there's nothing that's related to to any other sex traffic, any other people engaged with Epstein in underage sex.
That's correct. To my knowledge, no.
Okay. Let's talk about the witness interviews. 302s of witness interviews. Those are not subject to the court order. Those are not subject to any fictional sealed order for a search warrant. Why aren't you releasing those with the redacted names of the victims?
We are releasing as much as legally allowed. That's why we went back to the courts.
How is that not legally allowed?
Sir, do you know how court orders work? Do you know how protective orders
Actually,
work? Do you know how
Mr. Patel, I was a real prosecutor for 10 years. I know exactly how.
So I was a fake one?
And I want to understand what the court order prevents you from releasing witness statements that the FBI took.
You should know that as a real prosecutor, when the court hand downs a protective order and a motion to seal, the material is sealed unless that
your
judge
testimony
waives
here
it.
is that all of those witness statements are under a court order, a protective order.
We are providing everything we can legally provide.
No, that's not my question. My
My
question is, why are those witness statements that are not grand jury testimony, that if they were under a protective order are no longer under a protective order, why are they not being released?
How are they not under a protective order?
Why are you not going to the court like you did for the grand jury testimony to unseal those records?
The DOJ did go to the court.
No, not on those records. Why aren't you going? You just went on grand jury.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
You are hiding the Epstein files, Mr. Patel.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
You are part of the cover-up.
Can I respond?
Sure can.
Any allegations that I'm a part of a cover-up to protect child sexual trafficking and victims of human trafficking and sexual crimes is patently and categorically false in the work of my
So I hope you will talk to them when they have requested to speak with you, because the victims have requested and you are not responding to them.
Director, yes or no, is the FBI still spying on parents at school board meetings?
No, sir.
Is the FBI still targeting Catholics?
No, sir.
Is the FBI still spying on President Trump?
I don't believe so.
Is the FBI still censoring Americans?
No, sir.
Is the FBI still targeting Americans for shopping at Cabela's or purchasing Bibles?
Nobody is targeted for their faith.
Is the FBI still targeting Americans who are pro-life?
Nobody is targeting anyone for their beliefs.
Is the FBI still cooking the books on crime data?
The crime data is real.
Is the FBI still purging agents for conservative viewpoints?
No one at the FBI is asked.
Is that an organization reported to the FBI in July of this year regarding, just reading here from the article, that the FBI opened an assessment into a social media account user whose identity was unknown and who was discussing the planning of a mass shooting with threats nonspecific in nature. This is the FBI's statement to the press. and that the FBI continued to work this assessment investigation to identify the name and location of the user up until September 10th, 2025, which was the day of the tragedy. Can you provide us some clarity on what were the impediments to finding, the account user, and maybe describe in greater detail the FBI's work in that regard?
Generally speaking, yes, because I know even though the shooter's deceased, the investigation we're not done.
Sure.
And so the impediments to finding these individuals, and you highlight a great point. We had 2 huge tragedies in the span of days in this country, the school shooting in Evergreen, Colorado being one of them. And proactively going out onto these social media platforms, which are so large, is our biggest impediment. And we need to rely on the service providers. There's actual legislation, I can't remember the name of it, that's up for renewal, which will, and I think at the end of the month, which gives service providers the ability to report that information in from their end without liability. We need that to continue, because while the FBI has so many people and the police are great at doing it, there's just too many platforms to cover down on.
Well, I appreciate that, Director Patel, and I think we're certainly, I'm interested in continuing this conversation, because I think the reporting suggests that there's a pattern, and that ultimately, we want to make sure that law enforcement is able to prevent this kind of tragedy from happening in the future. I have a question. It's not meant as a gotcha question, so it just frame it there. But it is in regards to some reporting around a periodic transaction report that you had filed earlier, this year. So this is in July, pursuant to the ethical obligations as a senior executive official. You remember filing that in July?
Yes.
Yeah, so in that report, as best as I can surmise, you disclosed that you divested $100,000 or more in a variety of different stocks, which I presume was pursuant to the ethics agreement that you negotiated with the Department of Justice. In that same report, there's a disclosure regarding purchases of two different transactions. So between $15,000 to $50,000 in a national coffee house chain, and between $50,000 to $100,000 in a semiconductor company on May 9th and May 12th. Are those transactions that you're doing personally, or are these through a stockbroker, or are these transactions that you're handling yourself?
So how they happen is I submit proposals under DOJ guidance to say, hey, I would like to trade this or that, and they run their review, and the FBI runs a review, and then they come back and say yes or no, and then I make the transaction.
Is there a reason that you decided to make the purchases into those 2 companies?
Generally speaking, before I got this job, I was, trading stocks, but not a lot, like most people, and I just follow certain industries, and I thought they would be a good investment.
So the reason why I ask, right, because you had divested in other companies, and I presume that wasn't because there were actual conflicts. It's just that you wanted to avoid an appearance of impropriety.
It was both.
Both, but not all of the companies were conflicts.
Whatever they make
divested from.
I don't make the call, they make the call.
Sure.
Yeah.
I guess my point would be, the reason why I ask is, why I said it's not a gotcha question, I have for years led an effort here in Congress to try to ban members of Congress, senior executive officials, from trading stocks. And it's bipartisan in nature. We're working really hard to get that done, Republicans and Democrats. And you can understand, I think, given your role, given the nature of the position that you hold as the leader of the largest law enforcement agency in our country, that divesting entirely, not doing day trading now, I think would be something that would be in the interest of the American people. So I just would hope you would consider that, and that moving forward, that perhaps not purchasing stocks in individual companies, I would think would be something that would be worth pursuing.
Gentleman's time is...
I'm happy to give the witness an opportunity to answer.
Thank you. I'll work with you on it.
Gentleman from Alabama is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director Patel, for being here today. Newly declassified documents confirm that the intelligence community under President Barack Obama knowingly relied on unverified and fraudulent evidence to manufacture a false claim that Russia, in fact, meddled in the 2016 election. Is there more to be done to uncover the depths and origins of the Russian collusion hoax?
There is, and we're doing it.
Why should Americans still care about that, Director Patel?
Everybody wants to talk about a weaponized bureaucracy. And when we put out the facts about a weaponized bureaucracy, not because I said so, but because we found the FISA documents, because we found the 302s and the 1023s, then it becomes a political football. My job is to continue to put out that information and let the American public read it for themselves when I'm lawfully able to do so. And that's been my commitment on any subject, Russiagate or otherwise. Wherever the law allows me to do it, I will do it.
You know, when I first came in 2020, the number one concern as I was doing town halls was the weaponization of the government against the American citizen. And so are there things that you're doing, structural reforms that implementing so that the FBI cannot be weaponized again, whether it's against President Trump or future elected presidents?
Well, it shouldn't be weaponized against anyone. And the structural reform is simple. If you're going to go after a political individual or someone seeking political office, there has to be a grounded basis in law and fact to open up a criminal investigation. And if there's not, the investigation isn't even opened. And I've also gone back and reviewed other cases that were opened in prior administrations related to public officials, and we've closed a number of them because we felt that some of these actions were weaponized on either side of the aisle. I felt it wholly inappropriate for the FBI to be playing umpire and referee amongst these decision makers when there was no factual or legal basis to continue those investigations, so I shut them down.
And I think that's so desperately needed because we need to restore trust in law enforcement and certainly in the DOJ and the FBI so that American people don't fear the very government that's supposed to protect them. And so thank you for doing that. On August 11th, you released to the committee documents concerning leak investigations that began in 2017. Do you believe these leaks were accidental or were they intentional in order to influence public opinion against President Trump?
When I can publicly make a final decision on that, either through a recommendation of charging that the DOJ makes or findings that I have, I'm able to do so, but they're still not complete.
Why did the FBI under Director Comey want to undermine the Trump administration?
I don't know. You'll have to ask him.
Think it might have been political? How will Director Comey be held accountable for his leaks and classified information concerning the Russian collusion hoax?
Well, anyone. Doesn't matter what you did before or what seat you were in. If you leak classified information, that's illegal. And we will investigate it fully. And if we can bring enough evidence to recommend charges to the Department of Justice, we will. But as you know, in these leak investigations, it's very difficult to produce the information necessary. We know leaks happen. They literally happen every week. It's one of the most destructive things to this country. Media receives classified information beneficial to one side or the other. I'm a fan of none of it, and I want to shut all of it down. And we need to bring some real cases to deter individuals from doing that, and that's my focus.
What was Comey's role in creating the ICA?
You know, speaking from my memory, as the head of the FBI, he was charged under then Director Brennan and Director Clapper and the other IC elements to come in with the NSA, CIA, FBI, and ODNI and put together a collection of information on how the information sort of surrounding Russiagate came together. So he represented the FBI in that.
Was former Director of CIA, John Brennan, he's denied that the Steele dossier was used in creating the ICA. Is that true?
Well, it's, without commenting on him, the FISA has been released, and the dossier was in the FISA. It was in 4 FISAs. So I'll let the public decide.
Well, former Director Brennan actually denied repeatedly that he pushed for the Steele dossier to be included in the ICA. Is that true?
Denied. I'll let his testimony speak for itself, but then Deputy Director Andy McCabe also testified to the House Intelligence Committee, which has now been declassified, that were there no Steele dossier, there would have been no FISA.
Well, my time's getting close, but let me tell you this, sir, and well, my colleague from Texas said, thank you for the job you're doing. You're making the American people safe. You're restoring trust in these agencies that so many of us had lost trust in. So thank you for the work you're doing. That thin blue line, you're doing a fine job, and we want to let you know we appreciate it. Thank you. God bless you.
Lady from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director, for coming here today. And actually, thank you for your response to my colleague from New York who asked you earlier about violent extremism. And you said that there is violent extreme ideology on both sides. And I think you actually alluded to that same statement yesterday in the Senate. So I too have some questions I'd like to ask you. These are not gotcha questions, and just deny, please, what you deem to be false. So Dylan Ruth, who followed white supremacist propaganda murdered 9 black parishioners in Charleston in 2015. Do you deny this?
I'm sorry. Dylan Ruth? Roof, can you give me some more information?
You're head of the FBI, you probably know this. If you don't know that.
Last year when I questioned the Attorney General Garland about what the DOJ was doing to protect these communities, he simply deflected responsibility and said that Congress had not appropriated sufficient resources for them to be able to protect our tribal communities. Mr. Patel, what is the Trump FBI doing to counter the drug cartel infiltration and other violent crime targeting our Native American communities?
Thank you. It only took more than half of this proceeding to talk about one of the priorities that the FBI has, which is crimes on tribal lands. Every single crime that we have been talking about, whether it's child predators, human trafficking, narco traffickers, murder, they all happen on tribal lands as well. And I've said since the beginning, it is a priority, which is why we launched Operation Not Forgotten on tribal lands. And I'm the first FBI director to meet with the staff and tribal leaders here in Washington, D.C. and elsewhere, and invited them into my office and headquarters to see them, because I need engagement with tribal leadership, and I need our police and FBI agents to be engaging with tribal leadership. Otherwise, we're not going to break through. We have 1,900 Indian country cases open right now. We've got 600 indictments this year alone. We cannot forget tribal lands. Every single one of those people lives in the United States of America, and it is an absolute priority to protect them and their children just as it is anyone else.
So I think it's fair to say that what Mary Garland testified to, that the FBI and DOJ did not have the resources to address that. I think that that was an absolutely false statement. Would you agree with me?
It's a decision by him not to do so. That's not my decision.
At the end of August, the U.S. Attorney and FBI announced that nearly 100 personnel representing members of the Safe Trails Task Force operated near Wyoming's Wind River Reservation to assist with reducing drug trafficking and illegal guns. Director Patel, you have routinely stated that it is your mission to partner with and strengthen local and state law enforcement partners. How does the task force and other FBI efforts bring tribal law enforcement into this process?
The major problem with tribal lands is the sheer tyranny of geography and the amount of coverage that they have on land versus the personnel they have to do it. So what we've done is constantly surge resources to tribal lands across this country on a 30, 60, 90-day rotating basis, reporting back to us saying who needs more. And what we found is that most of these lands can be assisted by our counter-UAS program, our drone capabilities, and we're going to do it because what's happening is the Mexican drug cartels are literally flying overhead, dropping their cargo, their narcotics onto this land where no one's looking, and then it's being disseminated to children, to youth, to adults on that land, and killing them. And we got to stop it before it gets dropped off.
Well, and your testimony proves that the Biden administration did not lack the resources to address drug and violent crime in tribal communities or around the United States. It instead expended and wasted these resources investigating parents, Catholics, we now find out Turning Point USA, the RNC, and Republican organizations, rather than protecting our Native Americans by closing the border. Is that fair?
I think so.
Wonderful, thank you. And I do appreciate the work that you've done in this regard. I was previously the chairman of the subcommittee on Indian and Insular Affairs with the Natural Resources Committee, and safety and security on our reservations and for our tribal members has been one of our priorities, one of my priorities, and I very much appreciate the work that the FBI has done. Let me know if there's anything else I can do to help you, and with that, I yield back.
I will, ma'am.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentlelady from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for coming in today, Mr. Patel. In the past few months, the country has experienced a string of horrific, high-profile attacks that have been motivated by racial hatred or political ideology. A shooter attacked the CDC headquarters, firing hundreds of rounds and killing a police officer. An arsonist set fire to the Pennsylvania governor, Josh Shapiro's residence, with the governor and his family actually inside. Minnesota House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband were assassinated earlier this year. Clark and Charlie Kirk was murdered last week. Bomb threats have been made against HBCUs and the DNC, and just the list goes on and on. I only have just a few minutes today, so I don't want to take a lot of time to go into all the countless and devastating violent crimes and incidents that have happened at our schools or on our streets and under